The door of the house was banging loudly. I was alone in the house, so I had to go answer the door. At the same time, I felt angry at my husband, who had gone out with his friends for some late night wandering. I quickly covered my head with my dupatta, and as soon as I opened the door, I was startled to see my father in law standing there. His house was next door, and he rarely visited us. My husband never had a good relationship with his father. After our marriage, my husband had bought this house and moved me into it, while his father lived alone in the house next door. But the reason for my shock was not so much my father in law as the beautiful young woman standing beside him, who seemed to be around my age. I stared at the girl when my father in law's stern voice broke my thoughts. "Step aside, Shamila. Are you not going to let us in?" He quickly grabbed the girl's hand and brought her inside, sitting her on the sofa. "Go and bring some water," he instructed. I rushed to the kitchen, quickly fetching a glass of water. I handed it to the girl, who drank it all in one go as if she were extremely thirsty. I was confused. Should I ask my father-in-law who she was, or would he explain on his own? Why had he brought this girl to our house so late at night? I had been married for almost 15 days, and in all that time, I had never seen this girl nor heard anything about her. I only knew that my husband and father-in-law didn't have a good relationship. After the wedding, I found out that they rarely interacted. My father-in-law had visited our house only once before, and now he was back, this time with the girl. She looked like a bride, with henna on her hands and feet, a heavy outfit, makeup, and jewelry adorning her. Before I could ask any questions, my father-in-law spoke again, saying that he had forgotten the house keys inside and had no choice but to come here. "This is my wife. I married her today. I couldn't stand outside with her, so I came here. Please sit with her for a while. I'll climb over the roof, get the keys, and come back." He explained everything and climbed the stairs. I stood there watching my 55-year-old muscular father-in-law go. I couldn't even ask how he had married at his age, especially when my son had just married 15 days ago. Then I looked at the girl sitting quietly, her head lowered, twisting her fingers. There was an innocence in her face, and she couldn't be older than 18. I was puzzled. How could she marry my father-in-law? I wanted to ask her so many questions, but I didn't have the courage. My own marriage had barely completed 15 days, and given the strained relationship between my husband and father-in-law, I hesitated to engage in any conversation with him. I was afraid something might go wrong. My husband, Jamil, had an extremely short temper, and to make matters worse, I still couldn't understand his habits. Even after 15 days of marriage, he was distant and cold towards me. We hadn't developed any significant marital bond. Most of the time, he was either out of the house or hanging out with his friends. This was the reason why I hadn't been able to understand either my husband or my father-in-law so far. I just silently watched the girl, who had now become my mother-in-law. After a while, my father-in-law returned with the keys, took the girl with him, and left. I stayed sitting on the sofa. Around 2 a.m., my husband returned home, and against my will, I expressed my frustration. I asked him where he had gone, as it was already 2 a.m. "Our marriage is barely a few days old, and you give me no time." Hearing this, Jamil became furious and replied, "As soon as I step into the house, you start complaining. I didn't marry you so you could make my life miserable." His attitude made it clear that he had no interest in me. It seemed like I had been forced upon him. His father had arranged the marriage, brought the proposal to my house, and the wedding was hastily arranged. I didn't understand why my father-in-law had chosen me for Jamil, but one thing was clear. This marriage felt like a burden to him. Seeing Jamil in such anger made me panic, so I quickly changed the subject. "I was just asking because your father came home and you weren't here." Upon hearing this, Jamil immediately perked up. "Father, why did he come here?" His forehead furrowed with anger, and he looked at me with questioning eyes. I stammered, Actually, father got married." Jamil was shocked. "Married? At this hour?" I nodded. "His wife is about my age." I'm still shocked that he suddenly decided to marry at his age, especially to such a young girl. Curious, I told Jamil everything, and he slumped down on the sofa, holding his head in his hands. "Father won't change. I've told him countless times not to get married this way, but he never listens." Jamil mumbled to himself, and I was surprised to learn that his father had done this multiple times. I couldn't hold back my curiosity anymore. Jamil, did your father marry before? I asked. He shot me an angry look and responded, in a few days, you'll see for yourself how colorful my father's nature is. I don't understand why he keeps embarrassing me like this. The whole neighborhood talks about him, and no one can stop him. He stormed off to the room, stomping his feet in anger, and I stood there, stunned. I had never imagined that my father-in-law had such a colorful nature. But seeing his young wife and his actions today made me realize that something was off. And now Jamil had openly explained his frustration to me. This was the reason Jamil had kept me in a separate house after our marriage. His father, even at his age, hadn't stopped his indulgent lifestyle. When I reached the room, Jamil had already laid down to sleep. I wanted him to give me some time to talk to me, just like my father-in-law had taken his bride's hand with respect and walked out with her. I wished that Jamil would do the same, take my hand and show me affection. But Jamil never gave me that time. He never enjoyed talking to me. Whenever I went near him, he treated it as a duty, then pushed me away and went to sleep. As I sat beside him, he angrily told me, "Let me sleep. My mind is already messed up because of my father. Don't make me say things I'll regret." He shut his eyes, and my heart broke. His father had gotten married, causing all this trouble, and I couldn't understand why it was necessary. After all, his father lived in a separate house. I turned to the other side, closed my eyes, and started thinking. What had made my father-in-law at 55 years old suddenly decide to marry? 55 was no small age, especially when he also had high blood pressure. Who would give their daughter to him at that age? Perhaps because he was wealthy, owning many properties that were rented out, making it easier for him to find a bride. While I was lost in these thoughts, I eventually fell asleep. The next morning, I was woken up by the sound of someone knocking on my door. It was my neighbor, Zara Kala, standing at my door. Reluctantly, I let her in. She sat down and said, "Your father-in-law has remarried. Last night, he brought his bride home. The neighbors saw it. It surprises me that despite all this, his indulgent ways haven't stopped." She continued, "He's married so many young girls. Every few days, he marries a new one and leaves the old one behind. It's like a never-ending cycle." Zara Kala spoke with such disdain about my father-in-law that I had to cover my ears. I was beginning to fear my own father-in-law, wondering what kind of man he was, especially when the whole neighborhood was pointing fingers at his character. Zara Kala went on with more gossip and then left. I spent the rest of the day thinking about my father-in-law's actions. Later in the evening, there was another knock on the door. I opened it, and there stood my father-in-law again. He said, "I need to go out for something important tonight. My wife is scared being alone. If it's not too much trouble, could I leave her here for a while?" How could I refuse? I agreed, and he went to fetch his wife, whom I still hadn't even learned the name of. Afterward, he left, telling me he would return around 11 or 12. I wasn't concerned. My husband never came home before 1 a.m., so I was at ease, sitting with my mother-in-law. I thought this was the perfect opportunity to hear her side of the story, her painful past. I wanted to ask her how my elderly father-in-law had married her. She was sitting right in front of me on the sofa. I handed her a cup of tea and began to ask, "What's your name, and how did my father-in-law marry you?" She replied casually, "My name is Nadia, and I met your father-in-law a while ago. He just married me." Her answer was nonchalant, and I couldn't fully comprehend it. However, the joy and brightness on her face suggested that my father-in-law had made her very happy. For some reason, I started feeling a pang of jealousy. The happiness and radiance in her eyes were something I had never seen in my own. My husband didn't care about me, nor did he value me. He never gave me attention or love. He didn't even like being close to me at night, nor did he ever express any emotions when I was near. It felt like a nameless relationship that he was only maintaining out of obligation. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law, who was my age, seemed so happy with my elderly father-in-law that I was genuinely amazed. She sat quietly watching TV while I continued with the housework. My father-in-law soon came to take Najia with him, and after they left, I felt even angrier. What had I done wrong? Why did my husband not care for me at all? Around 1 a.m., my husband returned home, and in his anger, he said, "Father came today again." I replied, "Yes, he left Naja here for a while." Jamil, fuming with rage, said, "From now on, don't let him or any woman he brings here again. I don't want the world to talk about you the way they talk about my father. I've already become infamous because of him, and I can't take any more of it." He gave me a stern directive, and then he stormed off to the room. I was left silent, thinking how I had never seen a son who despised his father so much. Jamil's command was important to me, so I stopped contacting my father-in-law and he never came to my door again. Then I heard from Zara Kala that my father-in-law had left Nadia. I was surprised. Why would he leave such a young and beautiful woman, especially when he had married her at his age? No one had the answer, not even Zara Kala. As days passed quietly, the distance between Jamil and me remained. Sometimes I thought the distance between us was due to his troubles. He always appeared mentally troubled, though I never sensed another woman in his life. I knew only that he wasn't mentally normal, but something seemed to be weighing on him. About a month or so later, one evening, Zara Kala came to me panting and said, "Do you know your father-in-law has married again? And this time, it's a 15-year-old girl." This time, I was completely taken aback. Zara Kala had said that my father-in-law had married a 15-year-old girl. That was far too young, especially since my father-in-law was nearly 55. I couldn't believe it. Zara Kala laughed sarcastically and said, "That's the thing about your father-in-law. I don't know where he finds these young and beautiful girls. And who is giving him their daughters?" She continued, "I think he uses poor girls for his pleasure." Zara Kala's words were so harsh that I could barely process them. She criticized my father-in-law mercilessly and then, after muttering a prayer of relief, she left. I was left deep in thought, trying to understand what was going on. Later that night, when Jamil returned, I told him everything I had heard from Zara Kala. He sat there quietly for a while, and then he said, "I can't say anything to my father. He is my father, but I'm very disturbed by his actions. If I talk to him, he just starts a fight. And if I stay silent, the world talks bad about me." He looked extremely troubled, and seeing him in such a state, I gently placed my hand on his shoulder and tried to comfort him. But to my surprise, he quickly brushed my hand away and said, "Don't do these things. I don't like it when you try to get close to me like this. You being close to me doesn't sit well with me." With that, he stormed off to the bathroom, leaving me sitting there, stunned and heartbroken. I was his wife, I loved him, and I had the right to be close to him. Yet he called me cheap and hurt my heart deeply. I sat there crying for a long time before eventually falling asleep. The next day, I called my mother and, reluctantly, complained about Jamil. After listening to me, my mother said, "He's a good boy. He works hard and takes care of you. Just do what he says. Not every man is the same. Maybe he's disturbed by his father's actions." I was silent after that. I knew my mother would always tell me to adjust quietly with my husband, so I didn't press the issue further. As time passed, I found out that my father-in-law had remarried again and had left his previous wife. I was truly shocked. How could my father-in-law at his age maintain relationships with such young girls while my husband couldn't even give me proper time? The frustration was building up inside me, and just then my father-in-law knocked at the door. He said, "My wife isn't feeling well. If you could come over for a while, it would help." As soon as I looked at my father-in-law, my heart began racing. 1,000 questions flooded my mind. I decided it was time to ask him directly. I said, "Father-in-law, I'll come with you, but first, I want to ask you something. Why do you keep marrying? Jamil is so disturbed because of your actions that he doesn't even have time for me. He's always upset because of you, and he takes it out on me. Your marriages have destroyed our married life. My husband has never even given me proper time. He just wanted to escape from this house, from this neighborhood, and go to his friends, and even now he was still with them. His life was being greatly disturbed because of you. Why at your age have you developed this obsession with marrying?" I asked my father-in-law, almost rudely, but he looked me over from head to toe and then said, "Come, let's talk inside." He walked into the house, and I followed him and sat across from him. He began, "Nika, daughter-in-law, what I'm about to tell you, I don't know if you will believe it, but everything I say will be the truth." After pausing for a moment, he continued softly, "Before my marriage, I was like Jamil, wild, spending my time with friends, going to all the wrong places. That's when I met Jamil's mother. She was a dancer at a brothel, and I fell in love with her. I went against the world and married her, brought her here, gave her a respectable life, and started living with her. But after Jamil was born, my wife got cancer and passed away. I raised Jamil alone. He looked at me with deep emotion and went on. I loved my wife so much that I never thought of remarrying. I didn't even consider it until Jamil was 15. One day, I found myself wandering in the same streets where my wife, who used to be famous by the name Jugnu, had worked. There, I realized that there were so many innocent girls like her, forced into lives of shame, forced to dance for money. That night, I dreamt of my late wife. She said to me, "Can you stop the same fate from befalling other girls?" After that dream, I went back to the brothel where my wife had worked. There I saw a young girl being forced to dance. I had no shortage of money, so I paid a large sum to marry her and took her with me. But I wasn't truly her husband. I was only freeing her from that brothel. I loved my late wife, Khalida, and that's why, after keeping the girl with me for a few days, I divorced her and returned her to her family. That night, I felt peace for the first time. From that day on, I made it a habit to visit that brothel every few weeks. I would buy any girl being forced into a life of humiliation, marry her, and then, after a few days, I would find her parents and return her to them. But Jamil never approved of this. He would always say that people talk badly about us. He had been influenced by his friends, who told him that I was just indulging myself and bringing girls home for my own pleasure. But I had explained the truth to him many times. But still, he refused to understand what I was trying to explain. No matter how much I tried to make him see the bigger picture, he simply couldn't understand. I couldn't stop saving the lives of innocent girls just because of him, no matter how many obstacles he put in my way. This was something I felt deeply, and I believed it was a cause worth pursuing. That's why I continued with my work, unwavering in my mission to help those in need. In an attempt to push Jamil forward in life, I even arranged his marriage to you, thinking it would help him find peace and direction. But even now, he remains consumed with the opinions of others. He is constantly preoccupied with how the world perceives him, placing that above everything else. This obsession with others' judgments has caused him to feel unfulfilled, not only in his own life, but also in his relationship with you. Instead of nurturing your bond, he has let his doubts and worries interfere. What pains me even more is that he doesn't let me live in peace either. Every day we fight, and his frustration with me only grows. I don't understand, daughter-in-law, what wrong I have done that causes so much pain for everyone around me. I have saved these girls with dignity, bringing them from places of shame and pain and returned them to their families where they belong. I have never sought anything in return but the satisfaction of knowing I made a difference. But it seems that people, rather than understanding the truth of my actions, are only interested in casting judgment and spreading rumors. My father-in-law paused after finishing his speech, his eyes tired but earnest. I just stared at him, stunned, and for the first time I saw him in a completely different light. I had never thought that he was doing such a noble and selfless thing. All this time, I had judged him without fully understanding his intentions. He had been doing this to help these girls, not for his own pleasure, but to give them a chance at a better life. I realized that in my own life, I had been blind to his efforts. With newfound understanding, I turned to him and said, "Don't worry, I will take care of Jamil and help him understand. From today, I will support you in your noble work. I will also help you take these girls back to their families, no matter the cost." Upon hearing this, my father-in-law's face lit up, and I could see the relief in his eyes. He said, "If you help me take the girls back to their homes, it will be much easier for me. When I take them back, I have to answer thousands of questions from their parents, which is very difficult. They don't understand why I'm doing this or why I'm bringing their daughters back after taking them from their homes. It's exhausting to explain it every time." I promised him that I would always be by his side, helping him in any way I could, and I kept my word. I realized that in doing this, I was not just helping others, but also repairing the damage done within my own family. Whenever my father-in-law brought a girl home after marrying her, I took it upon myself to care for her and ensure she felt safe and comfortable. I assisted him in returning her to her parents, making sure that she was reunited with her family and that they understood the circumstances surrounding her life. Slowly but surely, I started explaining to Jamil that his father wasn't doing anything wrong. He was simply trying to right the wrongs that had been done to these girls, offering them a way out of a life they hadn't chosen. Over time, Jamil began to understand, and as his mental stress decreased, the relationship between us also improved. The constant strain that had plagued our marriage began to fade, and I saw a new side of Jamil. He became more open and understanding, and together we began to heal. Today, we are living a good life with less conflict and more peace, united in our efforts to make a positive difference in the world.